Hello everyone, my name is E-Man and I am blind reviewing slash breaking down and making predictions for Vox Machina. Today I watched episodes 7, 8 and 9 all in a row and I'm going to talk about them. So episode 7 started with an intro with Percy's backstory and Professor Anders, and we basically learned that Residuum is a magical amplifier that is made from Whitestone. Whitestone can be transmuted into it or something, or maybe it's some process creates Residuum, and that is a magical amplifier, which explains why the Briarwoods want to be in Whitestone. We learn a bit about Professor Anders and his relationship with the Rollo family, with Percy's parents, and it wasn't that good. They kind of underappreciated him, and he kind of felt like he was just a tutor, even though he could be so much more, which I think is actually a pretty good backstory. As far as the villains in this show, he's been one of the more compelling ones, but that being said, there's been a lot of just like undead zombies or weird stuff that doesn't, like, they don't have a motivation. So that's not really fair. But I liked his motivation and I thought he was a good character. Then we found out a bit more about Percy and how he made his weapons, and apparently it happened like in his dreams. He got the idea of how to make a gun, which is really, really cool, and I still wonder if he has a level of warlock or something, because that seems like he kind of bartered with someone in his head to create a weapon that can do certain things with the names on them and stuff. Also, that was another tease. There is a missing name on the barrel. There are 6 barrels and 5 names were on it. So I wonder if that last barrel is like for himself or for something else more interesting. But that is my thought on the 6 barrel thing. So basically the party splits up. Scanlan goes to make a distraction and burn the Duke's house down, while the rest of them want to go to Anders' house. That's the setup. And then basically we spend the entire episode with Scanlan, which I really like because Scanlan's very entertaining. And I felt that when he was in there drinking the different potions and different things happen and he doesn't know what, I thought that was a really fun encounter, and it really felt like a D&D situation. A party member alone, they have potions, like, oh, what do I have in my inventory? Oh, potion, I'll drink it, see what happens. I thought that it was really, really fun, and it felt like D&D, which I really like. That's when the show is at its best, is when it really feels like D&D. The other characters didn't really have any strong moments. It was all just build up to that last scene that ended the episode, which is Anders slitting Cassandra's throat and running away. I was not expecting that at all. I'm like, oh my god, someone just died. I was so not ready for it to happen so soon. I always thought Cassandra might die. I predicted so a few episodes back, but like, I was not expecting her to die straight away. One other thing that I noticed is that Percy's facial animation is flawless. Like, it's the best animation in the whole show, at least facial, when Cassandra's throat is slit. It looks really, really good. So yeah, this episode is very solid. I'm feeling a solid 7.5 out of 10, like, which is pretty standard for this show, which is what I think it is. Wasn't the worst episode, which I ranked at around 7, but it definitely wasn't the best. It wasn't episode 2 peaks or anything. After this episode, I didn't really have any predictions in my head. I was just so shocked that Cassandra was dead that I just straight away watched the next one. I didn't have time to think about things. Episode 8. Here we finally got some more Pike stuff, and this is the episode where Pike is mainly in this Everlight realm, and the priests are like, oh, we don't want to do it anymore, and she's like, no, I'll do it alone, I don't care. And then she meets the Everlight, and I really, really love the form that it took, how it is the shadow in front of the sun. I thought that looked awesome, and like the silhouette of a person. I thought it was a really, really cool way of personifying a god who is like the light. I thought it was really, really, really cool. And all of the scenes in there, her finding out that it is herself, which I also predicted, but it was like said, it's an introspective journey, Pike's one, rekindling her connection with the Everlight, and like being true to who she is, which is a classic good arc, and Pike's my favorite character, I think. Not because of that, I just think that she's really funny and I like her personality a lot. So yeah, Pike's whole arc in this episode and all of the art in the Everlight realm was freaking awesome. It was so, so, so good. So a thing that I noticed is that they stopped showing like the villains of the next episode in the intro bits, which I'm kind of happy for. It was getting a bit repetitive, just being like, the bad guy, cut to the party find the bad guy, defeat them. So I'm glad they stopped doing that. And by intro, I mean the scene that's before the intro music, before the opening. So then we get into the episode and Keyleth tries to cure Cass while the others fight Dr. Anders. And I really, really like everything that is happening in this building in this episode as well. The Cassandra healing, Keyleth not being sure of herself is a common theme, which I like that they're staying true to. I also really liked how Keyleth's magic looked. Like when she was healing her, there were like specks of magic appearing everywhere, which is how I think druids work in my head anyway. They like summon the magic that's around them naturally. It doesn't come from like a divine purpose, like a cleric or something. They like bring in the world's magic and apply it to something. And I thought they showed that really, really well with the little specks of magic like circling on her. So Anders, as I mentioned before, is a really good villain for Critical Role. His motivations are clear and good, and his power was very interesting and would be a very fun combat to play in. The whole possession thing, silver tongue situation, as he gets people to fight for him, first animated suits of armor, and then Grog, and then later the whole party against Percy. I thought it was really, really cool, and it just seemed like a very D&D combat, not something that would be on a TV show unless it was like D&D. Well, that's not really true. I don't know, it just felt very D&D. Percy, while pinned, talking, just trying to get a bit of time so he could perfectly line up his shot, was really cool, and I saw where that was going, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is sick. And then he does the trick shot, and it's awesome. Takes his tongue out, such a brutal like shot of his mouth, shot, and it was really just like a satisfying moment. And then he just blasts him off like the building, which was also really cool. Percy gets lots of cool visuals with his whole like shadows and the plague mask silhouette and stuff, and he just gets lots of cool shots. Then Cassandra talks to Percy and she's a bit cold towards him, even though her friend just revived her. And basically, I don't think I fully trust Cassandra. I can really see her betraying the party again. Or maybe this is all part of the Briarwood's plan, Delilah's plan, let's be honest. But I think that she will like turncoat and then turncoat again after seeing Percy in trouble. Maybe. So she's like a double turncoat. So she's actually good, but she doesn't know it yet. But anyways, I really like her and Percy's relationship. It just feels very real. Like, yeah, you left me. I'm not gonna just be like, oh, brother, I'm so happy. Like, that felt real, and I like that. Then Keyleth uses Skywrite in a really interesting way, an inspired way, to make the Rolo symbol. And that basically lets the whole town know that the revolution is coming. And that's just really, really good. And maybe the best use of Skywrite I have ever seen done in a D&D thing. Normally that spell isn't very useful, but that was awesome. Also, at some point in the past 2 episodes, I'm not exactly sure where because I watched them like in a row, Keyleth found some information about a solstice being studied, which I believe has something to do with the ritual that Delilah was talking about, which will also probably use the residuum. So those 3 things are definitely connected. And then the episode ends with Delilah going down to her ritual cave basement thing and killing a guy, using his blood to fuel her magic, and then using residuum crystals to amplify it and summoning like a massive amount of undead people, making a zombie horde, which I have some thoughts on. I don't like hordes of enemies. I think that they are a bad enemy for any protagonists to fight because the group is never going to die to some random member in the horde. What they will do is lose random NPCs along the way that aren't really crucial anymore. And it's just like, oh, we're gonna raise the stakes by killing some people. But the main characters are never gonna die from a nameless like zombie. Like that's not gonna happen. So because of that, I felt that there weren't any real stakes for the core cast. So when this episode ended with a zombie hordes coming, I'm like, oh no. So I just don't like hordes. They're like, very rarely does a horde of enemies kill a character that's important. So that teaser left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but besides that, the episode was really, really strong. I thought all of the Percy stuff was really good. The Cassandra twist and then revival and Keyleth finally proving that she can be the light while Pike is away. All very, very good stuff. The fight where everyone was being possessed and fighting the party, that's always really fun, and it felt very Dungeons and Dragons-like, which is what I like about this show. And yeah, Anders was a really good villain, the silver tongue being shot off, and it is all very good. I would rate it 8 out of 10, not quite 8.5 or 9, but solid 8, like top of the 8 ranked episodes. And then we have episode 9, and Delilah seems to be essentially Dr. Freeze's backstory in a different way. It's a fairly common backstory type, you know, my partner is very ill, I'll do whatever I need to save it, oh no, I became a villain. Pretty standard, but doesn't make it not good. Stereotypes are stereotypes because they are effective. And I thought that her one was very good for a D&D setting. She's like following a whispering voice. Whispering voice, very good. And she ends up in this library, picks up a book, reads it, casts a spell, gives some blood for the magic, which we also saw her do last episode. So blood magic not always a good sign. But this made me think that the Whispered One maybe isn't a demi-lich like I saw in the picture book before. It could be, but it also seems like she is essentially a high-level warlock. This episode wasn't my favorite because besides Delilah's backstory, which gave context for what she's doing a bit, I still don't know what she wants with the Residuum and the Solstice and the ritual that she's planning. And she's also like, Silas will just do it now, which means maybe she will forego the Solstice and just do it quicker. I have theories about that, but I'll touch on them in my theories at the end. This episode was just escaping a horde. Oh no, so scary. Let's kill a disposable character. Oh no, character development. It is just like exactly what I expected it to be, and it wasn't that exciting because, like I mentioned before, none of the characters, the main characters, were going to die this episode. They just weren't from a horde. But Pike coming through in an astral projection was very unexpected, and I think it's a really cool way of using a player who isn't at the table for like 4 or 5 arcs, not have her just ride in on horseback, but astral project. Really, really cool. I like that. That's a good solution for real life scheduling issues in D&D. So that was awesome. So Pike came in astral form and showed the party exactly what they were missing. Instantly heals Scanlan's hand, and then turns around and just trivializes the entire combat. Made it so easy. Imbued every single rebellion warrior's weapons with radiant energy, and then they just destroyed the undead. That was really, really satisfying and cool, and just Pike is awesome, and I like her a lot. So Archie's death was sad, but not unsurprising. It did give Percy some much needed, a little push to make him be the leader, which is exactly what the plot needed, so kudos to them. And Keyleth had a few times this episode where she used air, and one time where she really manifested it and went hard and blew a bunch of zombies away, but then they turned to ice. But at first it looked like air, and she's an air Ashari, I think, from what I've read in the comments. So that was nice to see her actually use air and not earthy spells like plant growth and stuff. So another Keyleth moment is when Vax just goes to her like, you know I'm in love with you, right? Like that was so strange, so out of nowhere. And she says that to him right now in battle, which is super fair on her end. But Vax, what are you doing? Why is this happening at all? Not the relationship, just right now seems like the worst time to bring this kind of thing up. And while we're on the topic, I feel like everyone in the party except for Grog has paired up, with Percy and Vex kind of longingly looking at each other, and Vax and Kiki, obviously a huge thing, and Scanlan and Pike is teased to be a thing potentially, like will you marry me? You know, good stuff. Either way, they all seem like they're in little partners, leaving Grog out, which is super rude to Grog, but also, I've never played at a table where so many players are having player-on-player relationships. That is crazy to me. That could be personal to my experience of D&D, but I haven't had very few, maybe one instance of players being in a relationship, players' characters being in a relationship. I've had a fair few with the DM, and this is both as a player and as a DM myself. A DM and a player having a relationship, that's more normal to me. I don't really have a point. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying that is unusual to my D&D experience. But know what was true to my D&D experience? Scanlan just talking in French to try and get out of a fight with the dude. He's obviously going for you, and then you're just like, what if I do a French accent and get out of it? That felt a lot like D&D. And Vax saying, hey, I want to try something, and climbing up a giant also felt very D&D to me. Saying, can I try something? That's what D&D is about, trying weird stuff. Then after Pike imbues everyone with their magic, the episode ends and they go into the secret back door to the palace on the way to the Briarwoods, and they find someone locked up in a dungeon. And the whole party's like, yeah, we'll help you, haha. And then Percy just puts on his mask and just gun aimed at her and is ready to kill this woman who we don't know her name. But she's almost definitely Ripley, right? Anna Ripley, that's the last name on his gun that isn't a Briarwood. That would make sense to me, at least, unless it's someone that we haven't met yet. But my guess is that is Anna Ripley. And yeah, so that is this episode. Man, if it wasn't for Pike, this episode would be sitting at a 6.5 to 7. Just running away from a horde aimlessly, in my opinion, until they're saved by God, isn't that good. But Pike is just so cool, and the way she did all of her spells and magic and healing and will you marry me? All of her dialogue was really funny. I really like Pike. Because of Pike, I'm rating this episode 8 out of 10. Without her, it would have been a lot lower. But it was a very, cool moment. Fine episode, lots of cool moments for Pike. So now it's time for me to make some theories. Basically, I feel like episodes 7, 8, and 9 just contextualized everything a bit more, told me what Residuum was, gave Delilah and Silas some backstory, Percy some more backstory, Percy Cassandra dynamic stuff. It is all set up for finishing this arc. There's no huge revelations that I've come to, but I do have some theories, and here they are. One is that Cassandra is still on the Briarwood's side, as I mentioned before. I think that after turning on the party, she will turn back again and be good, but she doesn't know that right now. Like, she is currently playing the party, in my opinion. 2, as I mentioned, all of the party have crushes on each other except for Grog, which is rude. 3, Delilah is doing a big ritual. This isn't really a theory, but I have an idea of what it might be. It involves Silas, it involves the Whispered One, it involves Residuum. So I think it could be re-summoning or like giving a body to the Whispered One. And she might like give the Whispered One Silas's body and then lose Silas. And then she'll be devastated because Silas is all she really cares about. And she's kind of being tricked by the Whispered One into like, oh, I've given you power, just help me with this last little spell, this last ritual. And then ends up with a dead Silas and the Whispered One coming into the mortal realm. That could be happening. That could all be wrong, but that would be really cool in my opinion. So yeah, that's my biggest theory. She said that we're speeding up the process, meaning that she was probably going to wait for the solstice, but is now going to try and do it a day or 2 earlier, maybe, because the solstice was in 5 or 4 days. I don't know exactly where they are in the timeline, but it sounds like she's going to do it like next episode kind of thing. And finally, I don't know how far away Pike is, and I don't know the rules about astral projection deaths being death in real life, or if she can just like fight, die, and then just wake up in her temple all fine. I think that it's kind of unlikely that we see her actual body come and save the day, but at the same time, if like the party almost TPK, then I can see her in her actual body coming and saving them. And finally, I hope that episode 12, the last episode, at least the second half of it, starts setting up where we'll go for season 2. I don't want it to just end with the Briarwood's defeat. I want it to be like a bit of downtime at long last with the party, and maybe some more information about Keyleth or Grog or Scanlan's backstory. Like an arc surrounding them is what I want to see. Because as I mentioned before, Vex and Vax are going to have a dragon arc in the future when the dragon cult comes back. I also hope that that is teased again some point in this season, because that's really interesting to me. And yeah, I kind of see the next arc being about Keyleth, Scanlan, or Grog. Probably Keyleth, we've learned the most about her. But yeah, that is me for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week for the grand finale of Vox Machina.